Hi, my name is Riley Sedlak, and my cultural background holds a lot of significance to my life. It's something that I love learning more and more about as time goes on. I am Hawaiian Japanese on my mom's side and Yugoslavian on my dad's side, but because of the way that I grew up, my mom's side of the family was around a lot more, and I know a lot more about my Hawaiian side. My great grandfather was Nathan Kaupaokuahale, and he was 100% Hawaiian. He married Jenny Iguchi, and she was half Hawaiian and half Japanese. They met in grade school in Hawaii when they were both very young, and at the ages of 15 and 14, they decided it was time to start their own family. During this time period, that was not really unusual because at that time, lots of people had started their families very young. My aunts and uncles are really big into genealogy, and based on research that they've done, they actually discovered that our ancestral history goes all the way back to Kamehameha I. And this was really big news for us because he is actually the very first ruling monarch of the Hawaiian Islands. Personally, I have never lived in Hawaii, but I was fortunate enough to have been able to take a trip to Oahu and the Big Island when I was in the 4th grade. On that trip, my grandmother, Natalie Nalani, took both my brother and I to an active volcano to show us the lava flows and teach us about the Hawaiian folklore. And then we actually stayed at the King Kamehameha Hotel, and the cool thing about that is that it is actually built on sacred land right outside of the king's heiau. A heiau is just the final resting place, and he was of great significance, so he got his own heiau. While we stayed in the hotel, there was actually a history room and a hall that we had discovered. And in that history room, at the center of the room, was this really big, beautiful canoe. And my grandmother had said that it actually had a name on it that looked very familiar to her. So, with that being said, she decided to do some research on that canoe. She discovered that night that it was actually something that had belonged to our family from very, very long ago. Like, people from our family had actually used that canoe to, get about their everyday life, get from point A to point B. And that was super interesting to learn. During our stay on Oahu, we got to visit the Dole Pineapple Plantation, where both my great-grandparents and some of their relatives had worked as young adults. I also got to visit Haleiwa, and that was the place that they actually grew up and raised their families. We also got to see the cemetery where many of my relatives before me are actually buried. Family is the most important part of my life in Hawaii, and along with that goes some certain names that are actually given to Hawaiian children when they are born. I was named Nalani after my grandmother, and this name actually means the heavens in Hawaiian. My brother was given the name Kaupaokua after our great-grandfather, and that name means the proud one. Although not all babies are given a Hawaiian name when they're born, majority of them are given a Hawaiian name, and they're usually names that they can pass down to the future generations of their families. I have lived all over the country, and because of that, my mom has always tried to instill the idea of family by making sure my brother and I are able to see our family. We did not always live near them, so they were constantly making trips and plans for us to go see our family and hang out with my mom's mom, her sisters, all of our relatives and stuff like that, so that we could kind of have a very close relationship with our family members even though we weren't near them. And once I'm out of school, I really hope that I am able to get back to Hawaii and kind of learn more about my ancestral home and heritage. Yeah, thank you.